Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast podcast. Can you believe that this is week 24? I say week 24, it's kind of podcast 24. I don't really know what week we're in at all, but nevertheless, it's myself, Kris, here as your host once again to take you through the weekend's English football action. And I couldn't do that alone, could I? So welcome back to Josh and Ross as usual. Good evening, chaps.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We've got lots to cover again this week, and we're going to take quite the trip around all the leagues, EFL. We're even taking a trip into Scotland this week, so we've got plenty to keep you amused, lovely listeners. So we will waste no time. We'll get stuck straight in. There is, of course, one game still to be played in the English football calendar this weekend, which is, of course, Man City-Bournemouth tomorrow night. We're recording this on Sunday, so apologies to all Bournemouth and City fans. You just have to bear with us till next week, I'm afraid. But we'll crack on with the weekend's action that has been played. And obviously, we'll start in the Premier League as we do every week. And we're actually going to start with Arsenal this week because they were the first game of the weekend, the lunchtime kickoff. Josh, lots of stuff being spoken about in the media this week, particularly about Arsene Wenger, his future, whether the club are in crisis as they sat, third, fourth in the table? My God. But they bounced back with a victory over Hull City. However, there was a little bit of controversy in this one, or was there? The first goal from Alexis Sanchez clearly goes in off his hand, and the phrase "goes in off" is quite direct and quite blunt, but it's true because that's what happened. Where did you stand on this goal, and maybe Hull feeling a little bit aggrieved? We'll come on to the referee in a minute, but just the goal itself?
Yes, I think the goal itself with Alexis, as you say, it is ball to hand rather than hand to ball. We've seen Alexis take shots and keep his arm up there anyway. So it's a natural position for him to be shooting with beforehand, and it's just unfortunate that it bounces in off his hand. I know Arsenal have had a couple of controversial goals this season with regards to the use of a hand in a situation, but I think like the others, and we saw one in another game this weekend from Gabbiadini, there's nothing he can do about it. He's got to be superhuman to get his arm out of the way with the reaction time required. So I think, it's just unfortunate, really. And I think other refereeing decisions across in this game just kind of help to make this a not very nice result for Hull.
Tough on Hull because they did perform well and certainly had a few chances, particularly Umar Niasse in the first half before Arsenal actually got in front. Ross, there was sort of what stoked the fire of this a little bit was Andy Robertson's interview after the game, the Hull City left back, where he claimed that referee Mark Clattenburg had apologised to the Hull City players at half time. I don't know if this has actually been officially confirmed or not by the referee in question, but that seems to have stoked the fire, stoked the fires. There we go. We'll go with that. I want your thoughts on that, and also on Robbie Savage is one of the pundits who's mentioned this weekend that he thinks that all handballs should just be fouls now or penalties, no matter whether it hits you deliberately or not. My argument to that is, are we then going to see players deliberately chipping the ball into people's hands? So where do you kind of stand on the goal itself, the referee's wording, and what we do from here moving forwards with handballs?
It's a knotty one because handballs are just... They seem to be the most divisive part of football whenever it comes to punditry and people talking about it at the pub or whatever. It's always, was it deliberate? Did he mean it? Could he get his arm out of the way? Was it a foul? Was it not? And it's a rarity that I agree with Robbie Savage, but for me, you either clarify what is and is not a natural and unnatural hand position, or you just say, right, if it touches your arm, your hand, your finger, whatever, it's a foul, because this grey area is ridiculous. The Sanchez goal, for me, it should stand, because for me there's no way, considering the distance the ball has travelled from the ground up to Sanchez, that he's going to get his hand out of the way. But his hand was already there, so that's clearly a natural position, because he wasn't preempting that the ball would happen to raise high enough so he could palm it back into the net. The same with the Klukas one, where he gives away the penalty. For me, that's a natural position, because the ball's flying at you, you can't reach it, you stick an arm out. It's a natural thing, it's instinctual. But it's a foul, and I agree that one should have been a red card. The goal, I think, should have stood, because there's no way that Sanchez is going to get his hand out of the way. But there will be people that say it's a handball, it's resulted in a goal, it's not a natural position because your arm should be by your side, etc., etc. It's so divisive, and so difficult to get an actual clear officiated decision on, that for me, I would begrudgingly agree with Robbie Savage that if this is the grey area that we exist in, either you clarify the rule or you just say, you know what, if it touches your arm anywhere, then it's a foul. Because otherwise we're stuck in this middle area where everyone feels aggrieved and no one can agree.
Yeah, I agree. I for me, as I say, I do have my reservations about the deliberate handball, all handballs being fouls, and I know in Spain a few years ago they used to have the automatic yellow card rule for handball, didn't they? And I think that ended up as a bit of a farce. So I'm with you. I think you just have to have a rule qualified now. I think if it's deliberate ball to hand, that's a foul. If it's not, it's handball. If the arm is moved towards it, the trouble is, I'm sure we'll still get calls that are hard to judge. But I think we're all in agreement that Alexis Sanchez in no way deliberately handled that ball into the net. So the goals stood. Josh, obviously on the result, Arsenal winning 2-0. Does it paper over the cracks for you? Do you still think that in another week's time we're going to get Arsenal supporters out in force, particularly if they don't get the result in the Champions League in the week?
I think if we look at how Hull approached the game, it's a really good result for Arsenal because Hull looked absolutely revitalised under Marco Silva. Lazar Markovic, who didn't really pull any trees up at Liverpool when he was there, looked absolutely incredible. So I think it was just a very good result for Arsenal just to stop, not the rot, so to speak, but to stop this poor downturn in form just in time for Champions League and FA Cup time coming along next week.
Yeah, that's of course we'll be all over that game next week, or will we actually? It's on a Monday night, isn't it? So crikey, we might have to rejig our schedule for that one, or indeed zip it all together. But Arsenal Sutton is of course the Monday night fixture next week. So disappointing day for Hull, but nevertheless a good result for Arsenal. I still think Hull looks very, very good on the day, and still very impressed with Marco Silva. So they might be able to survive. And speaking of survival, that brings us briefly, Ross, on to Crystal Palace. We're not going to spend a long time on this game because, frankly, who would want to? But a Joe Allen winning goal for Stoke City plunges Crystal Palace into all sorts of further issues. They are now second bottom in the Premier League on 19 points. Sam Allardyce is... He's making a lot of excuses. He's coming out with a lot of ideas, but not a lot is working on the pitch. Are we fast thinking this might be Big Sam's first Premier League relegation?
I don't even think it's. I do believe at the moment they'll go down, but as we all know, my opinions of promotions and relegations changes per week. At the moment, I would put Crystal Palace in my bottom three, but I don't even think it's particularly because their performances have been that bad. You know, I think it's mainly to do with the fact that teams around them are doing quite well. It seems that there's just 3 or 4 teams that are sinking at the moment, and everyone else around them is starting to turn things around. And Palace are just the ones that are sinking at the moment. So I would put them in my bottom 3 today if I was picking. But again, it could all turn around next week. They could get not next week, it's FA Cup, but you know what I mean. Next result, they could turn it around, and the teams around them could slip up, and then suddenly the dynamic changes completely. But on what I've seen so far, I think defensively they're getting better. You know, they didn't do too badly defensively against Stoke. It was up front, they just didn't take their chances, didn't make enough. So I'm seeing signs, but at the moment, yeah, I don't think they've been good enough.
No, I would be inclined to agree. And they look a side that are just, they look a side that are beaten almost before they go on the pitch at the moment, which is always a dangerous side when you're down there. And sticking with you for a minute, Ross, that brings us nicely on to Sunderland. Now, I appreciate you'll probably want to talk about Southampton, and indeed you can. But just quickly, I'll come back to you in a second after for the Southampton chat. But on Sunderland, I mean, why are they so completely unpredictable? I mean, was it the fact that they went to Palace last week and won 4-0? Now, do we have to look at that result now and say it was because Palace were that bad? Or was it just that Sunderland are just so bad at home? Because Southampton could have scored 8 or 9 in this game and Sunderland just looked completely inept. So what do we make of what they are at the moment, Sunderland?
Before last week, I would have said, yes, they look completely inept and, you know, it's a club that at the moment deserves to be relegated. Last week was a fantastic performance. I think they kind of rode the crest of a wave and just took their chances when they came, which they haven't normally been doing. And then this weekend, for the first 20 minutes against Southampton, they were actually really good. They took the initiative, they really did press us high, and it did kind of look like they were still riding that wave, and they kind of took on the favourites tag, which they'd been given by the media over the week. And they honestly looked a real good threat in the first 20 minutes. After that, they kind of started to fall away, and Southampton got a bit more control in it, and it changed the dynamic. And then you saw the same Sunderland that we saw a couple of weeks ago before the Crystal Palace result. So I think the last 2 weeks have been an aberration. I vaguely remember about this time last year, actually, Remy Gard got 2 or 3 wins on the spin with Aston Villa, and you asked me, is this the sign of an unlikely revival for Aston Villa? And I said no. And I would say the same about Sunderland now. They've been bad all season. Just because they've had a good week against Crystal Palace last week, I don't see, for me, how that changes the complexion of their run-in. So they were good for the first 20 minutes, but I think they reverted back to type after that.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite accurate. And Josh, do you see any hope for Sunderland? I mean, they brought in a few players in the window, as we spoke last week, a few sort of former Everton players. I think Brian Oviedo made his debut in this game, but it didn't really change a lot, did it? And there's real signs of unrest at Sunderland fans. A lot of them left before the third goal even went in, let alone the fourth. Do you sort of see any way out for them, or do you even maybe think David Moyes' future is under serious jeopardy now? Because we have seen teams change managers this late and stay up.
Yeah, it's certainly a worrying sign. I think Sunderland are that team that generally gets rid of their manager around about this time of year, and for some reason manage to inexplicably stay up. Normally when there's a derby against Newcastle, that's normally their turning point in a season, but obviously they don't have that this season. With the teams that they've still got to play, there's enough for them to get out of it. But you have to say, I think Jermaine Defoe's got 58% of all their goals this season. It's not that good to be reliant on such a player, especially if you can't get the ball to him, like they had problems today or yesterday against Southampton.
On the one side, they did get the ball in the net. It was ruled out for deliberate handball from Wabi Kazri. So not a good day if you're a Sunderland fan, but Ross, a good day if you're a Southampton fan. Credit where credit's due. You can only beat what's in front of you, but I want to put the focus on one player in particular. You probably know who's coming here. Manolo Gabbiadini. Now, our very own John Welsh was saying that you've got a decent signing there. He is a player who is multifunctional, can play anywhere across the front line. The first goal, I don't think there's any controversy. Like Josh said earlier, it's hit him, but it was on its way into the net one way or the other. But that second goal, that's top quality centre forward play and technique to finish that off, and he seems to have transformed your forward line at the moment.
Yeah, while I was watching the game, I think I said this in our WhatsApp group to John as well. I was watching the game, and it was kind of the same story that we had quite a few times this season, where we had the initiative, had the chances, but we were so profligate and missed so many good chances. Even when we were 2-0 up, we just missed so many good chances. It was unbelievable. And if we didn't have a striker like Gabbiadini, who is in excellent form, not just for us, but I think he's now scored in his last 5 games, including for Napoli. So to have a striker that is in form, that is fully fit, that looks hungry, looks lethal, is making good runs, it's invaluable. And this is a game that I think 2-3 months ago we would have drawn, and Southampton fans would have come away thinking, oh God, we were awful, we're in a real scrap now. And with him in the side, we look completely revitalised. But to be fair to Claude Puel as well, he switched us to a 4-2-3-1 this weekend, which has been the formation that we've been playing for the past 2 seasons. So it gave Tadic a new lease of life, and he hooked up really well with Gabbiadini as well as the game went on. It gave us a lot more protection across the back line. So some very good tactical changes made as well. And all in all, it was a fantastic game, especially with now 2 weeks to go to the EFL Cup final, which is our next game because we don't play in the FA Cup next week. So it was a fantastic result, a very good performance, and Gabbiadini, if that second goal was anything to go by, is going to be an absolutely fantastic player, especially when we get Tadic and Boufal back, both fully fit.
Yeah, especially playing that system, it'll suit him well. And James Ward-Prowse and Dusan Tadic, as you say, a new lease of life for them yesterday. One other question I've got to ask you, is there a better holding midfielder in the Premier League this season than Aria Romeo? I mean, I know N'Golo Kante's obviously got praise, and rightly so, he's been very consistent, but Romeo has quietly been exceptional in the recent weeks.
He's been exceptional all season. The thing was that when we lost Wanyama, a lot of Southampton fans were calling out for us to go and buy someone else, and there was a small selection of Southampton fans that were pointing to Oriol Romeu and saying, "You do remember we got this guy, right?" Because every time he played when we had Wanyama, every time Romeu was playing, we looked a far better outlet. And now he's been given the opportunity to start week in, week out. He's grown into the position. He's got more responsibility. I think he's got a bit more of a football brain about him than Wanyama did, and he doesn't need someone beside him all game. So I think he's been brilliant. I think he's been one of our, if not our, best player this season, and without him we would have been in a much, much worse position considering the injuries we've had up front. So yes, for me he is probably the most underrated holding midfielder in the division right now. I know the argument will be that Kante is probably better than him, but for me there's not many better.
Well said. And as Josh points out there, that Kante's sort of more of a holding midfielder, sort of box-to-box destroyer. So, yeah, it's hard to compare the two, but credit where credit's due. He's been fantastic, Romeo, and has gone under the radar a little bit. So, long may that continue. I'm sure you would agree. Let's have a look at a couple of other games then. We briefly scratch over Manchester United's victory over Watford. They were briefly out of that fabled sixth position that they seem to have nailed down in recent weeks with that 2-0 victory. Goals from Juan Mata, interesting celebration, taking off his boot there. I'm quite sure what that was all about. And Martial, who set up Mata's goal and scored the second. He seemed to be back to some sort of a level yesterday. So good result that for Manchester United. I don't think Watford really would have anticipated getting anything from that game, although they did have a couple of good chances. De Gea making some good saves. Middlesbrough 0, Everton 0. I don't really think we need to say anything, really, do we, about this one, other than maybe Ross Middlesbrough's ineptitude in front of goal. It's going to cost them, isn't it, at the moment? I mean, they are looking like that club that's falling.
They are, yeah. The funny thing is, when the season started, people were asking me about the three teams that came up, and I said Middlesbrough would struggle because they're a glass cannon, and they'd score loads, but they just can't defend. So what Aitor Karanka has done instead is he's packed 10 men behind the ball, made sure they don't concede, and they've just completely forgotten that they have a really, really good attacking line. They're trying to play counter-attacking football, and they just can't get out. There does seem to be a confidence drop. Gaston Ramirez obviously wanted out in January, so there's now issues there. I don't really understand why Middlesbrough changed so quickly and so drastically for what they were in the Championship. And if it sends them down, then it's going to be a massive misstep. But if it keeps them up, then brilliant. But for me, they're just the opposite of the Middlesbrough I watched in the Championship last year, and I don't fully understand why they've done it.
No, bit of a mess, isn't it? But Josh, you've got some highlights from the Borough Everton game. Well done, you, because I couldn't find any.
Yeah, I found a couple. It was pretty difficult, but at one point, Adama Traore switched the flanks. That happened. That was incredibly exciting for a bit. And there was also a foul throw given against Leighton Baines.
No.
For what can only be described as the worst throw I think I've ever seen a professional do, and he should retire immediately.
I saw 2 foul throws at Sunday League this morning, and maybe they were more highlights than this game in itself. But no, okay, well, there we go. You pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So we found the best we could out of that game. Sorry, Everton and Middlesbrough fans. I think probably Everton will look at that and think maybe that's an opportunity missed, because they've been in good form recently and couldn't score obviously in this game and couldn't take the points. But
they were very lucky at the end because Robles saved a header from Gusted, which I think was the only thing that happened.
Very good save as well, wasn't it, to be fair to him? Very, very good save. So, yeah, we should give him some credit for that, actually. So I take that back. But nevertheless, 0-0. Not a lot went on. Let's move on to another controversial game. Josh, let's stick with you. West Ham 2, West Brom 2. Slaven Bilic was not a happy chap. Sent to the stands, took his frustrations out on one of those big ear muffler type microphones on the sidelines. He was livid because of the situation that circled around the 90th minute winner, where I think it's James Collins is fouled by, is it Gareth McCauley? Certainly is manhandled to the floor, and that allows Johnny Evans a free run to head home an equaliser. This is all, of course, after Chadley had put West Brom in front, and Feghouli and Lanzini had put West Ham into the situation where they were in front at 2-1 with only seconds to go. What did you stand on this, Josh? Did you think it was a foul, and what did you make of Bilic's antics?
He was not a happy chappy come the final whistle. That's an understatement. But Yeah, I think the goal was given to Gareth McCauley in the end because I think Johnny Evans heads it onto his head, so it goes in. So that's the 5th goal of the season for him as well, which for a centre back is incredible to get those kind of figures. At the time when that ball comes in, almost every single player on the pitch is in the box. Someone's going to take a tumble. So I think it's one of those that the ref looks at it and thinks, yeah, a body's going to come together because it's just very, very close together with all those people in there. Because even Foster is up in the box at the time. But I think West Ham had the opportunities to bury that game a long time before the 94th minute. So as much as I'd like to, feel for Bilic, it's his own doing. I think they did have the opportunities to win that game, and would like to say Lanzini's goal was absolutely superb. And since the now infamous Payet has left, Lanzini's really stepped up into that position.
I actually wanted to ask you, one of you on that one. So, seeing as you've given me your thoughts on that one, Josh, I'll ask Ross the same question. Do you think the departure of Dimitri Payet has given a new lease of life to players like Lanzini, Ross? I mean, he was excellent yesterday. Feghouli has always been a good little player, just hasn't really had fitness until now. So, is it sort of potentially a new lease of life that we could be seeing from West Ham without Payet?
Yeah. I think we said it earlier in the season, actually, when West Ham were down near the bottom, and we were saying that should they think about dropping Dimitri Payet, because I know he creates a lot of chances, but he wasn't getting many assists and he wasn't getting many goals. Because he's out of form, do you have to think about dropping him? But we all kind of said, you know what, you can't, because it's Dimitri Payet and he makes that side tick. But now they've had to find a way to live without him. They are finding a way to live without him, and I think Lanzini is an excellent replacement, considering that he's been there for probably about another 6 months before Payet was there. And he hasn't really had the same kind of run that Payet had, because Payet just stole the show. So I think he's a player that's going to want to try and make a name for himself and make that number 10 role his own. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for him, and he's certainly taking it so far.
Yeah, you can't. You can only play what's in front of you, essentially, and you can only take the chances when offered, and they have been offered to Lanzini, and he's taken it with both hands. And as you said, lovely goal yesterday. Super little talented player. Good to see him getting some game time. The other games this weekend, Liverpool put to bed Tottenham Hotspur in this game. Josh, this was. I don't really know what this was. It was so bizarre because you had Liverpool coming into this game sort of out of form horribly in 2017. Was it one win from their 10 games? They weren't scoring goals. And then you had Spurs coming in who were consistently good, or have been consistently good all year. Been back in form, players in form, and the roles were completely switched. And 2 goals in very quick succession, both from Sadio Mane in 16 and 18 minutes, and then the rest of the game was kind of just dead. So, what did you make of this performance from Liverpool and also from Spurs' point of view?
I think Liverpool were back to where we expect them. The month or so that they were missing Mane really showed, as you said, with those stats. And yeah, he has such quick bursts in games. I think Ross could attest to it as well, that during his time at Southampton, because he's got the 7-minute hat-trick that he scored for Southampton last season.
Against Villa, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't count then. Sorry, Villa fans. Yes. Who's our resident Villa fan? Oh goodness me, terrible! I've forgotten his name.
Is it Jake?
Come back to Jake. That's it. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, Jake. Apologies. Carry on.
Yeah, so he is very much it's kind of spits and sparks, very quick player to kind of get his damage done and then just sit out for the rest of the game. But Liverpool's high press had returned that had been missing in the last couple of weeks, and Mane was at the heart of everything that was good for them. A little bit fortunate with the I think the through ball from Wijnaldum for the first goal, but Eric Dyer I think he spent too much time in midfield now. He's been put back to centre back, and I think when you look at the second goal and the way Mane bullies him, it's in the way that you do to a midfielder who knows that there's then a couple of centre backs behind him who can help him out. So I think that's where we should look at that maybe Dyer dropping into centre back isn't a good thing anymore, and Pochettino needs to look at bringing Wimmer into the centre back partnership whilst Vertonghen's not there. But yeah, there were Spurs were awful in that game. The back four were too high and too narrow, and the Liverpool front three or four made absolute mincemeat of that back four. And Pochettino did make a very interesting statement at the end of that game, insisting that Tottenham was still in the fight for not just fourth but the top six. So I'm not sure what he was implying with that, but maybe just resetting the goalposts for Tottenham's season.
Yeah, I wonder if that comment was made bearing in mind we're just about to bring the Europa League back into focus. I wonder if maybe, because, I think there's no doubt about the talent that Tottenham have in their squad. That is unquestionable. But are the legs going to start to suffer? Is the curse of the Europa League going to bite again? And I guess that's the worry, or that's the worry they have to have. And maybe Pochettino is just setting the boundary so that if Spurs do fail to make that top four, that he's got a reason potentially to look back on and say this is maybe where the run come. That said, I think Spurs have to be up there with one of the favourites to win the Europa League if they pick the stronger side. So they've got a fairly straightforward tie, I think, against Ghent in the next round. So be interesting to see whether the two English clubs get far in that competition. As in my opinion, they should. But Ross, just on this game as well, do you give the credit to Liverpool for turning up? Or do you do you sort of look at the Spurs side of things and say that they just didn't perform on the day?
Sure. The cynical part of me wants to say it was purely because of Mane, because of the runs he made and the finishes for both goals. He made Ben Davies look a complete mug all day, especially in the first goal. I don't know what Ben Davies is doing. He just kind of leaves him behind when he gets to the penalty area. So there's a cynical part of me that just wants to say it was the Mane effect. At the same time, Liverpool did look a lot more high energy. They did look a lot more incisive. They did put a lot more pressure on Tottenham, and Tottenham just weren't at the races. So I suppose if I was being dry-minded, as it were, then yes, you should give full credit to Liverpool for a much improved performance against a team that just couldn't cope with them on the day. But there is a part of me that does want to say that Mane had a massive effect on the way Liverpool played.
There you go, and that stat, Josh, has just popped into the chat box. Maybe it's something to do with it. Spurs have won only 8 times in the last 82 visits to Merseyside. There you go. Ouch, not good reading for the North London club away in Liverpool at the moment. Then now that moves us on to the full credit, by the way, so it should say to Liverpool, who were much improved. And Sadio Mane coming back is clearly a bonus to them, because they looked a lot more fluid and a lot more in gear. So good result that for Liverpool. On to the Sunday games. We've stick with you, Ross, for a minute. We've seen Chelsea drop points. So of course this is when the wheels come falling off. Chelsea will inevitably now finish 10th because they've dropped 1 point. I've seen some amazing reactions on social media to Chelsea not winning this game. Pedro put them in front, but a delicious free kick from a man I'm sure you can wax lyrical about, one Robbie Brady. So good result this for Burnley, and drop points for Chelsea, or is it just kind of as you were?
It dropped points for Chelsea because they should have beaten Burnley. At the same time, because their nearest rival Tottenham failed to get any points, they don't really care, do they? If Tottenham had won and closed the gap to about 7 points, there would have been a bit more pressure on, but the gap is still 10. So for me, it's one of those that Chelsea will go, well, we should have won, but you know what? There's not been a lot of damage done here. As for Burnley, this is the exact performance that I said at the start of the season would keep them up. I remember talking in the WhatsApp group to Drew when the Championship season was done and Burnley and Middlesbrough were coming up, and he asked me, out of the two that are definitely coming up so far, who do you think is going to be the favourite to stay up? And I said Burnley. All day, every day of the week, it's Burnley because of the defensive structure. And as the season kind of got closer, I listened to more and more pundits say, "Oh, Burnley, they're too Championship. They haven't done enough. They haven't brought in enough Premier League teams." And I was just sat here thinking, you haven't seen them then. You haven't watched them because they're so professional and so organised. And the home performances this season have highlighted exactly why I think they would stay up. And at this point, why they will stay up. It's going to take a massive, massive turnaround, which I just don't see coming for them, to see them get relegated. And I was so happy to see them get a point here because everyone kind of expected Chelsea just to run through them. Even I thought they would get crushed today, but they did so well. And the free kick from Robbie Brady is a absolutely fantastic one. He's very good at those kinds of distances. I think he scored one in the Championship for Norwich this year, which I think I retweeted back when it happened at least. And it's exactly the same. It's just outside the area, and he strikes it, and it curls. It's high. It's got all this distance on it, but it's so high. It's so quick. You just can't stop them. And I think that's why he has such a high price tag on him, because he's got that in his locker. So, fantastic point for Burnley, and I'm so pleased for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And on Burnley, Josh, their next game at home to Spurs. So that will be a tough one for Spurs, obviously. And you've got a point to make about Burnley's next couple of fixtures.
Yeah, so Burnley, as we've said, their home record is obscene. It's only Swansea, Arsenal and Man City that have won there this season. Spurs and Man U are yet to go to Turf Moor from the top six, but I think their next home game isn't till the beginning of April. So if anybody's got Burnley players in their fantasy football team or in their accumulator, remove them now, because they've only got 1 point on the road the whole of this season, and their next 4 games are all away from Turf Moor. So it is this home form that's going to keep them up, because they're just not doing it away from home at all. And that point they got, if I remember rightly, was away at Man United. So they're not really doing it against the teams that they should be.
Be interesting to see how they can get on in these upcoming fixtures, and you'd think really they'd want to try and get that victory over Spurs. I don't know if that's a live game or not. I'll have to look that up in a minute, but one to keep tabs on if it's not. But Chelsea remain 10 points clear. I don't think they're going to be too concerned at this stage with their fixture list ahead. You'd fancy them to pick up enough points to still win this league, I think. So, I think they're still very much the favourites. But the other game on the Sunday, which we will touch on, massive game this, really, probably the game of the weekend, I would suggest, with regards to points shared out. Swansea hosting Leicester. Now, Ross, we saw Leicester get a win in midweek against Derby, just about in extra time, in a game that I don't think either manager really particularly wanted to play, judging by the game itself. But it's back to normal once again. The Premier League, a 2-0 defeat away from home, yet another game without scoring. I think it was Bet of the Week on one of our other podcasting friends, Football Ramble, had their Bet of the Week was Swansea to win to 0. So that came in for those boys, so well done to them. And Leicester just, another poor performance, tepid up front, disorganised at the back, and Swansea roll on. So what do you make of this result? And Leicester's form, there's no form, is there?
No, there's not, and in fact I've even got some stats for you this week. Leicester City are the first top-flight sides to not score in their 6 opening league games of a new year since 1985, when Stoke did it. They are the first reigning champions to suffer 5 straight league defeats in a row, and they've now gone 10 hours without a goal. So they are in freefall. They are the club that are sinking quickly. I think for the longest time during this season, I've always just kind of thought, you know what, they will be near the back end of the table, but they're in no real risk of relegation. And even when they started to sink, and other people were saying, you know what, this could be the time that they need to start worrying about relegation, I was still kind of here going, nah, I'm not really sure. They might struggle a bit more now, but I still reckon they'll stay up. This was the result for me that has changed my mindset on it and makes me think, you know what, they could genuinely get relegated now. I was so shocked by how sluggish they were in this game, and Jamie Vardy just looks an absolute shadow of the player he was last year. I mean, most of them do, to be fair, but Jamie Vardy in particular, it's the second or third time I've got to see Jamie Vardy for a full 90 minutes now, and it's just so sluggish. The runs are just left to right, they're not forward-thinking enough. I just don't see anything about them at the moment. I don't see a team that looks like they have the quality to stay up, and it's such a shock to see them in comparison to some games last season. So I am now prepared to see Leicester in the relegation zones. I'm now prepared to see them get relegated. This was the result for me that kind of flipped the switch in my head and said, yeah, you know what, this is a real genuine risk for them now. So maybe I'm late to the party, but I just can't believe that they're as bad as they are.
No, I'm completely with you. As you say, the Vardy thing and Wes Morgan, 2 players that just look absolute shadows of their former selves, and Mahrez is the obvious other one. He's maybe got a slight excuse in that he's been away and had a sort of a tempered season with in and out of the team. But yeah, Vardy, particularly one thing summed him up when he had a shot which went wide and he just sort of slapped himself in the face. It was just amazing. And as you both put in the chat window here, there's no away win this season for Leicester, which is staggering when you think they went away to Man City and turned them over last season. If you remember that one. And Josh, as you put out as well, 2 clean sheets in 18 games. That's absolutely staggering stats. Josh, what about Swansea though? A wonderful goal from Alfie Mawson. I mean, if that's a centre forward, we're all, all over that, and hopefully it gets the praise it deserves, because that was a stunning volley to take the lead. And then the second goal probably killed it as a contest, to be honest. I suppose that's the only disappointing thing. Not if you're a Swansea team though, from Martin Olsen. Kasper Schmeichel maybe at fault. Maybe I'm being rude. Maybe I'm being harsh. I don't know. But Swansea under Paul Clement, they look good, don't they? And he, I have to be honest, really impresses me as a manager. You hear him on the sidelines, really vocal. Towards the end of the game, we were shouting press, 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 right up to the final whistle. He looks composed, and he looks calm, and he looks to be guiding Swansea to safety. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a little bit sceptical about him coming in. When he did, I thought any manager that took the Swansea job was almost on a hiding to nothing or on a consolidation mission for when they've eventually got relegated. So perhaps that's what it is, that the pressure was almost off as he came into the job to say, look, the position we're in at the moment isn't great. Just go out there and do what you can do. And it's working wonders for them. That they're up to 15th now, and you're looking at that bottom 6 or 7, and you're worried for everyone bar Swansea. I think Hull are the only other team that are really in form. He's got 4 wins in his 6 games. He's absolutely superb for what they're doing with them. And yeah, the goal from Mawson, it's a centre back, and he's just absolutely hit it. Nothing that Schmeichel could do about it. And the second goal, it's like they said, there's always a good time to score a goal, but just before half time would completely ruin Ranieri's half time team talk. And I think it's a manager who I'd misread a headline and had prematurely sacked this weekend, but I'll blame my dyslexia for that. And he was backed by the board. So we'll see if after this result the board still have faith with him.
Yeah, that will be the key thing. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I looked at the chair. Was it the chairman and his wife or daughter? I'll be honest, I don't know which. I don't want to say in case I'm wrong. But the young lady sat with him, the Leicester chairman. This is in the stands. They focused in on the camera. He looked like a man to me who was very much not particularly comfortable with what was going on in front of him. And I know that the dreaded vote of confidence came in, of course, this week, which, we all know what happens when you get one of those. So, yeah, I do wonder.
I saw on Sky Sports News this week, Paul Merson, who I know that he's not everyone's cup of tea, but he said to Jeff Stelling this week that he would sooner sack every single one of the players before he sacked the manager. Is anyone here in agreement with that, or would they put this at Ranieri's door and say they need to make a change managerially?
Josh, what do you want? I've got my views. What do you reckon, Josh?
I think sadly, because the players are assets, that you're never going to sack a player. Mahrez and Vardy were subject to £20+ million bids, so they're not really going to go. I think, let's put it this way, I wouldn't be surprised if Ranieri went, mainly because I thought he went earlier in the week. But I think, he's a dead man walking now. And I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think he can turn it around. He's now overly tinkering, and he's not the only manager in the league that has been caught for criticism for tinkering too much with his team. I think we're seeing it with Sam Allardyce and Pep Guardiola, to a point of over-experimented with their squad and feeling the pressure from it. And I can't see him turning it around now. I thought them having the Champions League break would be their time to rack up a couple of points, make sure they're safe, and then go again in the Champions League. But with that kicking off again next week after its winter break, I'm agreed with you, Ross, that I think it's now time to start looking at Leicester really being in a relegation scrap.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. I do think a lot of this has got to fall on the players, but I know this is going to be a weird thing to say, but I know there was the Vardy link to Arsenal. I know obviously it's ultimately the player's choice to stay. I just felt at the end of last season they had so many players who overperformed. I felt they had to go in a new direction, and arguably they had to either upgrade on those players, and I speak of Vardy, Simpson, Huth, Morgan, Schmeichel, Mahrez. I think all of those, there was an argument to say you could shift 50-60% of those players out and then upgrade on them because they were going into this Champions League campaign. And I felt that there must be an element of when you're playing at that level and you win the league where you just then mentally go, it can't get any better than this. We'll never do better than this. And although the Champions League is wonderful, the music and the teams and all that, yeah, fantastic. But there must be a part of the players that struggle to get up for Premier League games now because they know they're never going to do it again. And I think arguably they could either have, as I say, sort of planned for life without them in upgrading, or just replace players that maybe the hunger wasn't there anymore. I know that's a massive statement to make, but I look at some of those players and I don't know, I just don't feel like they've got the hunger there. And when you hear players potentially saying that the manager's lost the dressing room, I wonder if that's a little bit of an excuse to protect themselves rather than face up to the facts they're not being good enough. So, yeah, I have to say they are looking like a team that are bound for relegation right now. So,
there's two players in that team in particular that I completely agree with you that should have been upgraded, regardless of how well they did in the title race. They should have been upgraded because I honestly think if you were in a coma, if you were a massive football fan and you were in a coma for the season that Leicester won the league, and you woke up and someone told you that Robert Huth and Wes Morgan were the two centre backs in a title-winning team, you wouldn't believe them. I can't get my head around the idea that Ranieri looked at that back two, or the centre backs, and said, you know what, they'll be fine for another year. It boggles my mind that they're still there at centre-back, even when they started the season. I can't believe they brought in another starting centre-back. For me, those two had to be the two areas you look at immediately if you want to kick on and do something even better next year. So I do completely agree on that front, on replacing first-team players.
Yeah, it's one of those that you could just... It's so hard to judge, isn't it? Because if Leicester have a brilliant season again, we're all looking very silly now, going, well, those players were actually very, very good. But no, it does strike me as a team that needs an overhaul. And the trouble is, I don't know who would come in and do a better job than Ranieri at the moment. That's the biggest issue. So, yeah, one to
Nigel
watch.
Pearson's still free. So.
Oh, yeah, can you imagine? Or Alan Pardew, of course. Yeah, the future is Pards. Anyway, sorry, Leicester fans. That's quite an upsetting image, I appreciate, for us all. But nevertheless, a defeat for Leicester, and as quite rightly Josh said there, brilliant result for Swansea, and full credit goes to them, absolutely. We'll just quickly run through the table, and then we're off to the EFL, much to discuss this week. So Chelsea are top of the league still, as we said earlier on. They've had their lead cut slightly, but they're still 10 points clear of Spurs, who are in second, who equally have had their lead cut on Arsenal, cut completely because Arsenal level on points with them on 50 points in third. Liverpool back into the top four on 49. Manchester City have an opportunity to jump all of those clubs if they beat Bournemouth tomorrow night. Also on 49 in fifth. Manchester United back to sixth on 48 points. 7-point gap to Everton on 41 in seventh, with West Brom, Stoke and West Ham making up the top 10. Ross's Saints up to 11th, with Burnley 12th, Watford 13th and Bournemouth at the time of recording 14th. Again, they stay 14th no matter what happens tomorrow, but they could close the gap to Watford to within a point if they beat City, of course. Swansea up to 15th, 24 points and looking clear all of a sudden. Middlesbrough still in big danger at 16th. Leicester falling like a stone in 17th. And then the bottom three, Sunderland bottom, Palace second bottom, Hull third bottom. So it's a real scrap all of a sudden down there. Looking ahead to the fixtures that are upcoming, of course, as we said, we've got FA Cup games next week. So it's kind of a little bit all higgledy-piggledy. But if we look ahead to the 25th, which is the next round of fixtures, Chelsea host Swansea, Palace host Middlesbrough. My goodness me, that's a biggie. Everton host Sunderland, Hull City host Burnley. Southampton Arsenal, of course, postponed because of that EFL Cup game. West Brom, Bournemouth, Watford, West Ham is the evening game. Spurs Stoke is the Sunday game. Manchester City, Manchester United also postponed, obviously due to the EFL Cup game. And the following fixture on the Monday is Leicester against Liverpool. Again, massive game for Leicester. So that's in 2 weeks' time. So stay tuned for those. Right. That's the Premier League done then. Let's see what's been going on in the EFL this weekend. Ross, fill us in.
And I'm going to start with Morecambe in League 2 this weekend, because if you remember last month we told you the story of Morecambe fans having a whip round to pay off Jim Bentley's £1,000 fine from the FA. This weekend Jim Bentley decided to repay them in kind and bought all of the fans a pie and a pint, which I find interesting because I suspect that would have cost more than the £1,000 fine. But I don't know the finances, so who knows. Either way, it was a great weekend in the end for Morecambe, because they also managed to beat Cambridge United 2-0 at home as well. Biggest shocking result of the weekend from League 2, I would give it to Carlisle, who lost 4-1 to Blackpool. I mentioned last week that without Charlie Wick, maybe the wheels would be coming off the Carlisle promotion charge, and this result seems to highlight it to me, because Blackpool are not the best side in League Two. They are up to 11th with this result, but they haven't been brilliant lately. They've been getting a lot of draws, and to go away to Carlisle and get a 4-1 win is pretty emphatic. That's now only 1 win in 7 for Carlisle. I did also mention last week that the team that was probably in the driving seat to catch them was Exeter City, who had won 12 games on the bounce, or undefeated in 12. They were on the cusp of breaking their club record if they'd managed to win this weekend. And of course it happens to be that their local rival Plymouth was the game that they could break the record in. So naturally Plymouth turned up and beat them 3-0. Heavy defeat. I imagine it's quite a sore one for Exeter as well, but that's their first defeat in 13, like I say. Knocks them down to 5th, so that might derail them a little bit, but the momentum they built to get out of the relegation scrap they were in, all the way up to the promotion places, is quite incredible nonetheless. The other big story to come out of League 2 was Grimsby Town. They lost Omar Bogle in the window to Wigan, and for the record, Omar Bogle has already got 2 goals for Wigan, so he looks a very good buy now. Their manager, Marcus Bignot, had to go and apologise to the fans after the game because they were 4-0 down after half an hour and ended up losing 5-0 away to Crewe Alexandra. So he went over to the fans to apologise. There is a video of it floating around which I saw earlier. So if you want to go and find it, I'm sure you can. It's a very interesting one. He's very open, very honest, very frank, and does also drop a swear word in there. So he's human after all. Into League One. Biggest shock of the weekend in League One was Scunthorpe United, who lost 1-0 at home to Shrewsbury. The reason that's a massive shock isn't just because of the positions in the table. Scunthorpe obviously in the promotion chase, Shrewsbury down in the relegation zones. That was the first time that Scunthorpe have lost at home since the 19th of December 2015. So massive, massive result for Shrewsbury Town, and does change the complexion of the top and the bottom. We're going to start at the top because Sheffield United are now 5 points clear after Scunthorpe's slip at home to Shrewsbury. They managed to beat Peterborough 1-0 with a last-minute goal from their top goal scorer Billy Sharp, which, like I say, is now a 5-point gap. Aaron Oztuma. Now, he is a name that we don't mention very often on this podcast, but we really should. Didn't do much at Peterborough. Peterborough fans will be wondering where this has come from, because for at least the second time this season, he scored a dipping volley from 40 yards out in their 4-1 defeat, unfortunately, to Bolton Wanderers. But an absolutely incredible goal on a weekend of incredible goals, especially in the Championship. Definitely one to look up. I would imagine there'll be teams now looking at him in the summer, but Peterborough fans will be scratching their heads and asking where that came from, because he didn't do much for them. Down at the bottom, I did also want to put a bit of a highlight on Swindon Town this week, because there is a fantastic article in the Daily Mail, which for the record isn't something you hear me say often, but there's a fantastic article in the Daily Mail about Tactics Tim Sherwood, his time at Swindon Town. Before this weekend, he only had a 19% win rate and had not spoken to the media since he was hired, despite the fact he is kind of, maybe sort of, being their manager, but not officially. He's in charge of the tactics and the training and the picking of the starting 11, but he's still not the manager, and it's someone else that gets to front up when they lose. And they lost this weekend to Bury, who, as we know from earlier on in the season, were on a terrible run of form, especially over Christmas, slowly starting to turn it round. They got a very good win here with a James Vaughan penalty, but that result now puts Swindon Town into the relegation zones, into 22nd. Now, we'll be talking about Coventry in a little bit more detail in a minute, but I did also want to mention now that Coventry are now cut 5 points adrift at the bottom of the division, which is a sorry sight indeed. The Championship. Now, the Championship action did start on Tuesday with a 2-2 draw between Wigan and Norwich. As I said earlier, 2 goals for Omar Bogle in that game, so he already looks like a very good buy for them. The Friday fixture was Sheffield Wednesday versus Birmingham. If you watched it and you haven't seen Birmingham since they sacked Gary Rowett, you probably wonder which kind of team rocked up, because it's not the Gary Rowett Birmingham you remember. They were considerably outplayed at times by Sheffield Wednesday. I thought they were a little unlucky to lose by 3, which was the final score, 3-0. But at the same time, they were nowhere near good enough to actually get anything from that game. So really, really disappointing result for Birmingham City, and more to the point, a very disappointing performance. Aston Villa, now, the wheels on that are really, really rocking, because they gave Ipswich Town an absolute battering for about 80 minutes and ended up losing it 1-0 to an 83rd minute goal from Emma Hughes. I'm amazed that Aston Villa are in the situation they're in. The transfer business that was done in the summer and the player issues they've had so far this season have really done a number on them, and I suspect you're now going to be waiting until next year to see the real Aston Villa. But for Ipswich Town, that's a fantastic result, because I think Josh and I Josh and I will both agree that it's quite incredible to think that Mick McCarthy is still there after his recent run as Ipswich Town manager. But a fantastic result for him. Josh will also probably agree that Brighton did very well this weekend with a 4-1 home win over Burton Albion. Derby County were 3-0 down to Bristol City after 40 minutes this weekend as well, but they managed to come back to draw that 3-3, so that was a pretty fantastic game. Fulham with a 3-2 victory over Wigan Athletic. The shock of the weekend, and I so wish that last week's question, I think it was from Jimmy, asked me about Leeds United and said, because of their patchy form, do we now think Leeds United are going to be slipping out of the playoff places? And last week I said, it's just the Championship is what happens. You win one week, you lose one the next week. They ended up losing again this week, 2-0 defeat to Cardiff City, a home defeat as well, and had a man sent off late in the game. Momentum being what it is in the Championship, that is a very concerning result for Leeds to have lost that game. That's now 2 defeats in 2, and to lose a game to a team that's not the best in this division, let's be fair, is a massive shock to the system. So I'll be interested to see how they do in their next game. But I so wish that question had come in this week, because we could have had a much more interesting answer. We're going to finish in a minute with the Norwich game, because there's a lot to say on that. But Preston North End 4, Brentford 2 was a very good result for Preston. QPR went down 2-1 at home to Huddersfield Town, who again seem to be strengthening their position on the playoff places. Reading 0, Barnsley 0. Not really much to say. Rotherham United got a 1-1 draw with Blackburn Rovers. I can't think of who scored the Rotherham goal off the top of my head now, but he did unfurl a shirt in tribute to, I think it's Goldson, is the Brighton player, who has, I think he's now got an operation on a heart problem, so a very good moment there for the Rotherham goal scorer. And we finished the weekend off with a 1-0 away win for Newcastle against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Bit of a controversial goal from Mitrovic to win it, but nonetheless, another good win, I should say, for Newcastle, which puts them back to the top of the Championship. Now, the reason I wanted to finish on Norwich this weekend was because our loyal listener Max often puts my feet to the fire when it comes to Alex Neil, because I am on here every week saying, I don't understand how he's still there, I'm stunned he's still there, etc. And he's slowly starting to turn things around for Norwich, and it's been absolutely excellent to see. Like I say, Max has been holding my feet to the fire over it, and this weekend I kind of knew there'd be a tweet coming, because they put 5 past Nottingham Forest at home, including 3 goal of the season contenders. The first from Johnny Howson has absolutely got to win goal of the season, because it's an absolute beauty. Nottingham Forest did also go down to 10 men with Eric Lehigh sent off. Their goal was scored by Ross McCormack, and I think Dorius de Vries also came off injured for them, so not their best day. But I did want to say in my own defence that Alex Neil, I am staggered he's still there. I really am, because of the rancid form they were in over Christmas. I don't remember if either of you two remember watching the Huddersfield game. They lost it 2-1. It was a TV game on a Friday night. They were 2-0 down, and the Norwich home fans were chanting, "You're getting sacked in the morning," to Alex Neil. And they chanted to Delia Smith, "Delia, sort it out." And that was a good day for Norwich fans and their recent relationship with Alex Neil. So I am amazed that he's still there. I really, really, truly am. The hate was vitriolic, and it's brilliant to see him coming out the other side of it. But a brilliant result for Norwich, and I did have to give Max a shout out, because I did have to laugh when he sent me that tweet. But yeah, that's the EFL for this weekend. Like I say, we'll be going into a couple more clubs in a second, but you are all up to speed.
Lovely job. As you say, we are going to pick out a couple of clubs, a couple of games that we saw this weekend in the EFL. Should we start with Nottingham Forest? Because I'm just intrigued. Obviously, we've mentioned Norwich there, and they got the victory over Forest. But both of you, I guess, really on this one. Ross, I'll start with you. I mean, where do Forest go from here? We're going to come on to Rangers in a little bit, which will all tie in. You'll see why in a second. But they just seem to be a club completely in a mess, turned down by Nigel Clough. They got this issue with the ownership, players revolt, some of the best players sold. I mean, this is like a massive club. Are we going to see another Bolton or another club we're going to come into a minute, Coventry situation with them?
We could do, but that depends on how Fawaz is now redirecting his attention with the ownership. So they were set to be sold to a consortium, I can't think of which nation, but there was a consortium in for them, and he ended up pulling out of the deal at the back end of January, I believe, to much consternation from Nottingham Forest fans, who are desperate to see him gone. At the same time, we've seen Philip Montagnier sacked over the course of the season for playing some decent football, but it was, so leaky at the back. Montagnier was completely undone at the start of the year by the fact that Fawaz sold Oliver Burke behind his back, and then the money wasn't reinvested. Then they lost Henry Lansbury in the January window, didn't really replace him. So there are some odd decisions being made. The chairman keeps saying that he genuinely does things for the club. He's got their best interests at heart, but the fans aren't seeing it. The fans don't believe it. They have now appointed Gary Brazil on I say a permanent, but on a part-time contract till the end of the season, where they're going to be looking to bring in a new manager for the long term. Nigel Clough has turned them down. Gary Rowett has turned them down. Like I say, in a minute we'll be getting onto the Rangers situation, but there's now rumours that Mark Warburton is being linked with the job. It depends entirely on whether or not Fawaz is looking to sell still, or if he's planning on reinvesting, or what the situation is. If he's planning on sitting here for another season, then yes, we're in trouble of seeing Nottingham Forest drop further down the league. If he's planning on selling it, he's got someone interested, or if he's planning on reinvesting now, then we could see a bit of a resurgence next season.
Yeah, it's a very, very sad tale, that, and I feel for Forest fans. They're a proper football club, if ever there was one. Another proper football club, and supporters have always been fiercely loyal, Josh, is Coventry. We touched briefly on them a short time ago with their form. They've made a cup final. Is it the Checker Trade Trophy? It's a bizarre name for a trophy. They got to that final, but what do you make of the situation going on there, Josh? I mean, we saw the situation they had with the Rico Arena and everything there, and they've fallen from. You think of the days of Dion Dublin and who were the Premier League days of sort of Paul Williams and Steve Ogrizovic and Darren Huckerby, all those good days, and now they're just a club that they just seem to be slipping out of almost existence, like bottom and just toiling. What can you tell us about the situation at Cov at the moment?
Yes, it's not good reading. We've unfortunately seen this with a number of ex-Premier League dropping down, but the way Coventry are doing it is absolutely remarkable in a bad way. They've got no league win since the 1st of November. They're 8 points adrift at the bottom of League One. The ground share with London Wasps isn't helping them, with the pitch being basically broken up every so often with a rugby game, which can't be good for any kind of manager trying to implement a system of decent football where you've got to keep it on the ground. And the owners are now in a legal battle with a £750,000 legal bill. So it's just not good reading for anyone there, and that with 9 fans being arrested at their game at Northampton in protest of the way the club's running, you can see that it's got to that point where the fans have just had enough. And Russell Slade in as manager, he can be a safe pair of hands for clubs in and around that area, but even he can't seem to turn them around at the moment.
No, it's a little bit of a pickle, isn't it? And I just feel for Coventry because they're a proper, another like Forest, a proper club. And we'll finish on. Maybe we could do a little bit of Devon Derby if we get time. But Rangers, Ross, you touched on it briefly there, and Josh has done some research on this as well. It's all been going off in Scotland, hasn't it? And this has led to a lot of reports about their manager. It just seems to be another club that is. Well, crisis, is that the right word? What can you tell our listeners about what's going on in Scotland?
I wouldn't go as far as crisis. I'd go chaos. I think that's what we've had this week. So the situation is that I think it was Thursday night, but I could be a day or two out. Either way, sometime during this past week, it came out that Mark Warburton and his team of first team coach and assistant, I think, had all offered their resignations to the Rangers board and decided to leave after apparently receiving some contact from Nottingham Forest. So about an hour later, maybe not even that, it was then reported that Mark Warburton came out and said that I haven't offered my resignation. No one has. I have no idea what's happening, but I haven't offered my resignation. From what I've read so far, neither side have admitted to lying or being wrong or the communications breakdown. It seems like both sides are just kind of entrenched in their story, so someone's lying. I would lean towards the suggestion that it might be Rangers trying to save some face. But Rangers have come out in a statement and said that Mark Warburton has been using the club to try and up his stature back in England because of Nottingham Forest interest. So it doesn't look reconcilable. It looks like Mark Warburton is now leaving the Gers. It's a mess, I'll give you that. I don't think it's as far as a crisis just yet, because Rangers are a big enough club to be able to attract a good manager to go in there and hopefully challenge the Celtic machine a little bit more than they have this year. But at the end of the day, the Rangers team that's there now, and Scotland really isn't my division. I can't stand the Scottish division, but I do know that Rangers, obviously after their relegations because of the financial issues, as they've been coming up back through the leagues, they still have a team that is quote unquote championship level for Scotland. So they haven't invested the same kind of money that like a Celtic would have, especially like an Aberdeen as well, who have been a great benefit to the Scottish division, with Rangers being out of it. So I think Rangers will bounce back once they settle to this bizarre issue. Mark Warburton will be fine as well. He's an excellent manager. What he did at Brentford a couple of seasons back is pretty incredible, and he was a very good pick for Rangers at the time. If he goes in at Nottingham Forest, I think he could do a good job there, but it will also depend on whether or not, like I said earlier, the ownership, and whether or not players will be sold behind his back if they invest, blah, 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 blah. But it's been a crazy week at Rangers, and we don't often cover the Scottish division on this podcast, but you couldn't not after the chaos that it was on Thursday night.
Some very good points, well made, have to say. Okay, right. Actually, Josh, just before I get your Brighton update, I do have to ask Ross about the Devon derby briefly, because obviously it's down here. I know you touched on it briefly, but what was your sort of thoughts on Plymouth ending? Because we all know you love a bit of Tisdale, as do I, but Plymouth brought that run crashing to a halt, didn't they, in this Devon derby?
Yeah, and completely broke my coupon this weekend, so thanks, Plymouth. We should really be asking you about it, because I know that it's a very passionate derby, Plymouth and Exeter, because it's one of the few derbies that Plymouth get. But considering the wave that Exeter have been on, and Plymouth, to their credit, they've been very good this year, but they have had these patches where they just go on runs where they just can't buy a win, and they're staggering to draws. And they had a loss a couple of weeks back, and then they got a win last week, and it kind of set this up to the point where I just thought there's no way that Exeter aren't leaving this without something. But then Plymouth dispatched them quite easily. It was almost as if the little brother has been growing up and getting all these new ideas and new toys and whatever, and then the big brother just kind of put his palm against his forehead and just said, you know what, we're going up, you're staying here kind of attitude. So a fantastic result. I didn't see it coming. Like I said, the wave that Exeter have been on recently has been absolutely incredible in League Two. So as much as I want to say it was a massively well-deserved result for Plymouth, and it was, I'd rather say this is a massive, massive upset considering how both teams are running into this game.
Oh, you get the old Green Army on your back for that one. No, I know what you're saying, and it's hard to disagree. So, yeah, good result for Plymouth. Go on then, Josh. You can have your short period in the limelight for Brighton. Go on.
Thank you. Although they're doing their job of putting it in themselves in the limelight, seeing as I was actually at the game, I thought I should probably talk a little bit about it. Especially, I'll start with Burton, because if anybody's got a chance to have a look at Michael Cook's free kick that he scored, it's up there as probably the best live goal I've ever seen. Even if you told Stockdale where he was going to put it and that he should just stand there and block it, he still wouldn't have got to it. It was absolutely superb into the top corner. That saying, that was the only chance Burton really had, and to use Ross's description that he said earlier, it was a bit like the big brother kind of holding the little brother's head while he kind of flailed his arms around, because Brighton had them at arm's reach, so we're just knocking it around very quietly. But still very impressed with Burton. I think what they're doing overall in the Championship is incredible. But 2 goals from Tom Mohamed, Baldock coming back from injury, and Glenn Murray getting a goal right at the death. There were definitely more goals in it as well. It wasn't a flattering scoreline. Chuba Akpom on his home debut could have had a chance to get a couple if it wasn't for some refereeing decisions that earlier in the game the ref was giving these as, just play on, but was calling them up for fouls later on in the game. But overall, there was a moment at the 18th minute when applause went round the ground for Connor Goldson, who's out for the rest of the season, as mentioned, with a heart issue, was spotted in a routine checkup. So it's good to see that we're getting those checkups done now around English football after the Moamba incident. But he does want to come back and play the game, so it's all good for him. And at 24, it's no age to be retiring from football. And if he can get back for next season, it'd be absolutely fantastic because he's a great centre back.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. And best wishes go out to him, of course, for that unfortunate health scare. But yeah, we wish him well. Okay, so that wraps us up on EFL for another week. Obviously, again, if you've got any questions about anything we brought up tonight or another club, then please do let us know. And it's questions where we go next, in fact, to finish off the podcast. We've got 3. One is quite in-depth, so I'll save that one for last. But we'll start with Pete Kennelly's. I'm going back to Norwich. Pete Kennelly just says, who put the jam back in Norwich's donut? Any of you want to pick that? Oh, in fact, Ross, perfect segue because you wanted to mention Norwich, so go for it.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask Josh, so let's not continually pass the question around, but I'll bat it back to you both. To answer the actual question there, I would say it's Alex Neil. I think he deserves a lot of credit for sticking with it and just kind of grinding through, getting his ideas across. The Championship side that he brought up a couple of seasons ago in Norwich City was excellent. It was a fantastic side, and I'm really glad that he's managed to get it working again, at least for the time being. The 5-1 did have a lot to do with the quality of the goals that were scored. I think you've both seen Johnny Howson's opening goal, and goals like that, even if it's a 1-0 win or even if it's a 2-1 defeat, goals like that normally perk up a team. You know, they can start a run even if it's just for 90 minutes. They give you an extra edge. To have 3 incredible goals in it, and to have Nottingham Forest go down to 10 men and have a goalkeeper injured, it was one of those games where everything just kind of clicked for them, and hopefully it can now start a run for them. But I think you've got to give Alex Neil a lot of credit for it. The one question I was going to ask Josh, which I think I can now open up to both of you, is that I've been saying all season that Norwich were my pick to go up, and I even said at the start of the year they got up as champions because I thought they had more championship nous than, for example, Newcastle did. Obviously they've fallen away. I think they're now in a position where they're only 3 points outside of the playoff places because they did so well at the start of the season. The mid-season blip has been almost mitigated by that. If they were to finish in the playoffs, do either of you two think they'd actually be favourite for the playoffs, considering the quality of their championship squad?
Go on, Josh.
I think that depends on who else is in the playoffs, to be honest. I think if they finish 4th or 5th, I think they can go up. If they finish 6th or 3rd, I don't think they will, because I think whoever's getting into that 3rd position is just going to be a little bit stronger than Norwich, and think have a bit more about them. That being said, you know, Huddersfield is still up there, and we thought they were going to drop off, and they've had some great moments, and I think they're probably who they'll come up against if Norwich do sneak in. And I think Huddersfield would probably be my team to go up through the playoffs.
Sheffield Wednesday is mine, personally. I suppose I'm a little bit biased with regards to our friend Nat, but no, I think Sheffield Wednesday, there's just, every time I watch them, they seem to impress me. So I suppose it all comes down to the run a team gets at that stage of the season. I agree with what Josh was saying there, but yeah, I don't know. The more I think about it, yeah, it's perfectly possible. But I'll stick with Sheffield Wednesday, and I'm still hoping that Fulham come with a late run, just so I can be like full hipster and say I was right all along. Although I'm not holding much hope of it at the moment, but you never know. But yeah, good points made all round, to be fair, on both sides. Okay, let's have another question here from AJ Gunners 14. He wants to say, any chance of teams like West Brom, Stoke, West Ham or Southampton will be able to beat Everton to 7th and possibly secure Europe? We are pushed for time, but I want to get both of you to answer that question. So Josh, do you want to start us off?
I think Southampton will get Europe from the League Cup final that they've got.
Don't say these things if they're not true, Josh.
But I don't think they'll get it from the league positions. I think Everton are almost isolating themselves in the table a little bit, a bit like the top 6 have. I don't think they can be caught. I don't think they'll be able to progress higher than the 7th they're already in.
Fair enough. Anything different for yourself, Ross?
I would only add that if Everton are caught, the only team that I think will catch them are West Brom.
Interesting. West Brom in Europe. Crikey, can you imagine? Tony Pulis would be having a lovely...
Europe.
Yeah, I mean, that would be full hipster if ever there was something, wouldn't it? So, yeah, good question, that, AJ. Thanking you. And we'll finish with this question, which is a long one. So get comfy, but it's a good one from our good friend Noma. Who simply writes, so someone said that if a team is well drilled, particularly defensively, it takes them about a season to lose if they change managers. With that in mind, I was wondering if Nigel Pearson's Leicester is the one that managed to defend that team to the title, and now we're finally seeing Ranieri Leicester. That Leicester team was doing extremely well towards the end of the 15-16 season and seemed to pick up when they left off in the 16-17 season. Surely the loss of a single player, Kante, can't turn that team that bad. I've never paid much mind to Ranieri as a manager, but were his teams in the past known for being compact defensively? Keep up the great work. So thank you, Noah. Again, I want to get both your views on this. Does she make a fair point there? Because, we were seeing Leicester improve dramatically under Pearson towards the end, and, then they springboarded from that. So is that a fair point? It's a very good question. And she also says as well, 14-15 season and 15-16 season, rather than what's in the pic she put. Okay, yeah, I see what she's saying there. So she's corrected herself, but the point still stands. So where do we both stand on that? Josh, do you want to start us on that one?
Yeah, it's something we've seen when defensive teams have switched manager. I've just been, whilst the question was read out, jotting down 4 transitions that have happened that I think we can all agree on, that from a defensive point of view, a team then brought in a more attacking manager, that we've seen after that the defensive discipline drop away. I've got the transition of Moyes to Martinez. It's probably the most recent one to happen, that Everton had that absolutely fantastic season under Roberto Martinez in his obviously first season there, which then dropped off after a while because the man cannot build a defence to save his life, which is probably why he's Belgian manager now, because they're not really too concerned about that. The other one that I've got, actually from a couple of seasons ago, Sam Allardyce and Bilic coming in for West Ham. That one where, again, same kind of thing, West Ham having that great season last year. We're seeing this season that Bilic can't really get that defence back to the well-drilled compactness that he had under that transition from Big Sam. I should probably save Ross a couple of these as well. So I will finish on... I'm going to go with Pulis to Mark Hughes as well. We've seen Stoke stumble with their defensive discipline after Pulis has gone. I think Mark Hughes is slowly getting that back. We've seen comments from players who have left Britannia Stadium, or the Bet365 Stadium, as I think it's now called, saying that Hughes doesn't really look at the defence and they don't really get as drilled as much. So perhaps that's the problem. It's where people have their philosophies lying.
Fair points. Yeah, Ross, do you want to finish us off on that?
Yeah, I was going to add 2 more managerial transitions into that argument. The first one I'd make is Sam Allardyce from Sunderland to David Moyes' Sunderland, because they've been horrific this year. At the same time, you could argue that obviously Sunderland have been through so many changes, it was inevitable to go wrong eventually, and obviously that they have a much weaker 11 than Allardyce had with all the injuries and the upheaval they've had this year. And also Lambert to Sherwood from Aston Villa, because Paul Lambert didn't do a bad job defensively with Aston Villa, but when he got the sack for not scoring enough goals and not winning enough, they went to Tim Sherwood, who I can't comment on. But Sherwood tried to make them more attacking, and the back line just kind of fell away. At the same time, I don't know if I ever vocalised this, but I have a sneaky suspicion that Nigel Pearson, and it's again Nigel Pearson, his time at Derby at the start of this season, although he was only there for a cup of coffee, I think the work he did with Derby defensively has been the springboard from which the new guy, Steve McLaren, has been able to take them on with. And he's added the attacking flair to them, But the few weeks that Nigel Pearson spent with Derby, I think, has tightened them up at the back significantly and has made them a much tougher unit to beat. So I would completely agree that there's an aspect of, even if they're not there for long, if you bring in a defensive manager, they can teach these players a new way of thinking, and they'll take those lessons on to the next manager, who might then beat them out of them for the next year, but they're still there, you know. And I think it's a very good point that may very well be afflicting Leicester, is that last season was just such an aberration. When he came in, Ranieri said that he just kind of kept everything as was, didn't he? He said he kept the backroom staff, he was going to keep the formation for now until he learned about his players, and what he discovered was that his players were actually very good when they were in that 4-4-2 system and defending and good on the counter, so he just kind of did better with what he had and just kind of gave Mahrez more licence and Vardy more licence, etc. And now this season it's really his team. You know, he's started to take control of it. He knows who's who, he knows who he wants to replace, knows who he wants to bring in and get rid of, etc. Now he's tinkering with it, and now it's fallen away. I do completely agree that there's something else going on. It can't just be that Kante's gone. So maybe you've got maybe you're in on something there.
Yes, an excellent point and an excellent question as well. So thank you, Norma. And yeah, I think she raises some really good points there. It's probably one we could expand upon in future podcasts, actually, because it's one that I think even people who are paid to talk about football, which I have to confirm, are not, often skip and often don't qualify in their arguments. So I think it's an excellent point, Norma, and we thank you very much for making it. So yes, there we go. Well, that's another podcast wrapped up again for another week as far as the English football goes. We thank you to everyone for tuning in and for your continued feedback. I do want to give a quick mention to an email I received from Kris H. Who sent me in another question, which was excellent, actually. He was just saying to me that it was last week. He said, I'm not writing into rubbing the fact Lukaku is a world-class striker. I would never bring that up again in capital letters. He said, no matter how many 4 goals he gets from here on out at 4-goal games. But he said, I am, however, writing with a couple of general questions about changes to the game. Should deflected shots on the own goal or crosses into the area be knocked in by defenders trying to clear the goal be granted as assists for the player of scoring for the team who touched the ball last to aid his stats total? I actually think arguably they shouldn't, but I can kind of see what his point is there. But yeah, I wouldn't change it personally. And then the other point you made, what if Premier League teams were ineligible for the EFL Cup? Obviously, the historic FA Cup would need to stay with the top teams included. If you think the FA Cup is currently lacking respect, the EFL Cup is practically looked at with disdain by Premier League coaches and fans alike. And I reckon the EFL was reversed as a competition for the sake of clubs represented in the circles, i.e. rebranding. And he said it could be more interesting. It could be more meaningful, interesting fight with fresh, exciting winners. It would make the FA Cup more novel and special for the Premier League fans when it comes to it. And it would make at least one form of competition for European Premier League coaches concerned. The scheduling wouldn't then be an issue. So we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the next pod. Now, I'm going to save that question because I want both of your opinions on this. So we're going to bring that up next week, if that's okay with you guys. So if one of you can write that down, because I have a terrible memory, but I want to discuss the cup competitions as a whole, and I thought it'd be better to save that for next week when we have the FA Cup talk again, because we've got a limited amount of games to talk about, so we'll have a bit more time to drill into that subject. So Kris, thank you for that. It's an excellent question, and we will come back to it next week with our views. So superb. Right. Okay, we'll wrap up the podcast there then. You can follow us at the FH Podcast. We're available on SoundCloud, iTunes and YouTube as usual. So please do hit us up on there. Please leave us your feedback. The podcast general will be back tomorrow, recorded tomorrow at least, usually released on a Tuesday. So please do get in touch if you like what we do. Keep all those good things coming, or bad things. And we do have some very big news that we are likely to be able to announce on tomorrow's podcast. If that wasn't a tease, nothing will be. So tune in for that. We also have blogs coming. A blog from Jimmy, our good friend at Nguna, about the MLS expansion. Look out for that. That should be going up this week. And more plans for more podcast interviews as well. So all that to come, but for now we will leave you in peace. So please do enjoy what's left of your weekends, or indeed the week ahead. My thanks to Ross and to Josh. Thank you, gentlemen.
Pleasure as ever.
Thank you very much.
And we will be back to answer that question and more from Kris on next week's podcast after the FA Cup weekend. So tune in then, and until then, keep your beers strong and your glasses trendy. Keep those questions coming in, and we'll speak to you very soon.